Hello and welcome to Enchantment of Eternity's review for Cathexis, which is episode 12 of season 1 of Star Trek The Voyager. This video is a part of a series of videos where I review episodes of Star Trek Voyager one episode at a time. In this video I cover the first season episode Cathexis. So Cathexis is the episode in which Chakotay and Tuvok come back from a shuttle mission where they're injured. Tuvok is going to be okay, but Chakotay apparently has been declared brain dead by the doctor. And then Tuvok says that the aliens that attacked them, if they can go and find them, they might be able to find out what weapons they used and therefore can save Chakotay's life. So Janeway goes on a mission to try to find these aliens. However, the mission keeps being interrupted by people changing course or turning off the warp core, or doing whatever they can to stop Voyager from going back in that nebula. And so Tuvok launches an investigation to find out that there's an alien presence on the ship that is inhabiting people and forcing them to do stuff, mostly turn the ship around. And so Janeway tries to give her command codes to the doctor as a failsafe, but then the doctor's program is shut down and it's going to be a couple hours before they can reinstate it. And so she comes up with a plan to share her codes with Tuvok, the next senior most officer on the ship. But as soon as that happens, the alien being inhabits so many people trying to stop Tuvok and attacking Tuvok. And Tuvok then stuns everyone. And then later, with some investigating, they discover that Tuvok is in fact the one who's inhabited by the alien, and that he's trying to lure them back into the nebula so that the aliens can kill the entire crew and feed on their energy or whatever. And he eventually holds the whole bridge crew at phaser point under threat of death. However, we do find out that that was not the alien presence that was inhabiting people and trying to get them away from the nebula. It was, in fact, Chakotay's consciousness. And eventually, he inhabits B'Elanna's body and has her eject the warp core so they can enter the nebula. But Tuvok tries to go in thrusters, but they manage to overpower him and knock him out and take the ship away from the nebula, and they reintegrate Chakotay's consciousness back into his body, so he's a-okay now. So this is so let me start with the definition of Cathexis, because I always thought this was a pretentious name for the episode. I used to think it was catharsis, but that's actually, I realized soon that that's not the word that was used. Although someone said that cathexis is kind of and the opposite of a catharsis. But anyway, cathexis apparently is a psychoanalysis term that means the concentration of mental energy on one particular person, idea, or object, especially to an unhealthy degree. So it sounds to me about someone who's obsessed with something or just fixated on something that's unhealthy for them. I'm not exactly sure how that applies to this episode. Again, it's a pretentious title. But at least it's not Latin. I think those are the most pretentious episode titles, the Latin ones. Ex post facto, I'm looking at you. Maybe inter armam eminent silent legus as well. And there's a few others. But yeah, always pretentious with the titles. But anyway, this is a Joe Manowski script, and no, I wasn't the least bit surprised to find that out. As you well know, if you've seen my channel before, I am not a huge fan of Joe Manowski. I typically don't really like his scripts that much, and this has the touches. Like, it feels like a Joe Manowski script. I mean, he also did the Dramatis Personae, again Latin, another Latin one. I think that one's Latin. It's pretentious regardless. But anyway, where's it Greek? I don't know. I think it's Latin. But regardless, that episode was similar to this one, and energy beings taking over the crew. In that case, it was the entire senior staff. In this case, it's just Tuvok, but still, it's like... Now, apparently, Brendan Braga also worked on the script, and he said that he had a hard time working on the script, that he did not enjoy his time working on the script, and he was convinced that it would turn out horrible. Apparently, he had disagreements with Michael Piller on how best to write the script, because Michael Piller wanted to make the story about paranoia. And Brendan Braga said that he didn't think it was possible to write about paranoia on the Starfleet ship, because what do they really have to be paranoid about? What are you talking about? They had to be paranoid about an alien infecting their bodies and forcing them to do shit. It seems like the perfect paranoia story. In fact, I would go as far as to say that they... because that comment I read seemed to imply that they didn't go in that direction. However, it seems clear that they actually did go in that direction. And that was a major theme. When I watched the Delta Flyers and Robert Duncan McNeil was talking about the theme of the episode, he said, "Oh, paranoia." I was like, yes, it's there. They did do it successfully. Like, there was a scene where Harry Kim just like dozed off. And they were all like freaked out because they thought the alien took him over, and Tuvok got his phaser out, and he was like, whoa, what's going on? I was just thinking. And then Janeway was like, I'm really disturbed about what just happened. And that was powerful. It got into the whole paranoia thing, and the whole thing with Neelix like being a dick and going to the doctor. It's like, oh, this guy had his food cold, and he usually has it hot. Oh, he's the alien. Neelix is so annoying in these earlier. He's so annoying every once in a while throughout the entire show, to be fair. But he's annoying in a different way in season 1. He's just like the bugging. Anyway, so this is the episode that I always forget exists. In fact, I do remember one stage in my life that I did absolutely forgot this episode exists. Now, I was still taping episodes off the TV at this stage, and so I did record this off the TV. In fact, I missed the next week's episode, but I taped this one, and I remember like years later going through and watching the tape again, and I saw, because I write the titles on the on the cover of the videotape, and it said Cathexis, and I was like, what the fuck is this? I don't remember any goddamn episode called Cathexis. I watched it and I was like, I vaguely recall this existing, but not really. It was kind of new to me because it's such a forgettable episode. Such a forgettable episode. Now, the main thing that the episode could be remembered for is this is when they introduce the Victorian Holonovel that Janeway does. Shoot me now. And they do this for several episodes. Thankfully, it didn't last for very long. But, yeah. So, the actors, they had Caroline Seymour is her name, playing the lady of the house, or whatever the hell she was. And if you don't know who Caroline Seymour is by name, you would probably, if you're into Star Trek, would recognize her by face or voice. She was in several Star Trek episodes. She played a Romulan commander in both Contagion and Face of the Enemy. Unfortunately, not the same one, which is dumb. She should have been the same character. And she was also the scientist who joined the Enterprise but then disappeared after the episode ended in the episode First Contact. And I think she's been in other Star Trek things. Did she take over for the Romulan Senator Kretek in DS9? No, I don't think she did. I think I remember thinking that she looks similar to that character. But anyway, regardless, when I was watching the scene with her in it, I was thinking like cinema sins, you know how they do the what everything wrong with, and they like ding, oh, this person shouldn't be there, ding, like if you're familiar with that, with those videos, you might get my reference. But what I was thinking of, like I would ding this episode when she appeared, it would be like, oh, Caroline Seymour isn't playing a Romulan in this episode, ding, because she's kind of Romulan. She's always a Romulan. Well, she's twice, but she's really good as a Romulan. I don't want to see her in some dumb ass Victorian bullshit holograph. Fucking bullshit. It reminds me of like Jane Austen or whatever. Although later they'll introduce a fucking ghost story. Woo, yeah, great. That's when it gets really good. But oh my god, this thing sucks. I hated this so much. I cannot understate like just how much I hated this. When this first came out. So the episode, we'll get there, but the episode Persistence of Vision focused on this Holo program more, and the trailer for the episode made it look like the whole episode was going to be about the Holonovel. So I refused to watch it. In fact, that was the first episode of Star Trek ever since I first started watching Star Trek that I just flat out refused to watch. There'll be a couple coming up that I missed, but I don't think there's very many. I just flat out, no, I'm not going to watch this. Now, as I say, I'll get to this more when I get to Persistence of Vision, but it actually turned out to be a decent episode. It wasn't actually about the Holonovel. So I watched it years later, but yeah, it took me a couple years before I actually got around to watching because I hated this Holonovel so much. But anyway, when I was watching the scene with the gentleman, the man of the house, I was like, this guy looks familiar, but I couldn't quite place him, and I looked him up, and I was shocked, surprised to see it's actually the guy who played the security chief in the first season of Severance. Or the security guy. What's his name? Doug Grainer. Yeah. And when I saw that, I was like, oh my god, that's him? Like, he looks obviously different. It's 30 years prior, but he looks way younger. He looks more like the handsome, which is not how I saw the security guy from Severance. But yeah, I just finished watching season 2 of Severance after, while I'm recording this, so it's still fresh in my mind. I was like, yeah, that's the security guy. But apparently, so the original idea for this Holonovel was supposed to be a Western. That's what Jerry Taylor originally wanted to be, but they realized that they couldn't afford it, and that they would probably not do it a lot because it would blow the budget. So she changed it to be sort of the gothic Victorian era bullshit that it is. And apparently this was originally supposed to be in the episode Eye of the Needle, and it was scripted to be in the episode, but for whatever reason they took it out and postponed it to this, and thank God, because Eye of the Needle is such a great episode. It would be blemished by this dumbass Holo, because it's so boring. It's like, who gives a fuck about it? Like, there's no point in it. And actually, I think I heard even Delta Flyers talking about and wondering, like, why is this here? Like, why did they do this? Like, what's the point? And I think I read somewhere that Jerry Taylor wanted to explore Janeway's character more, and so she thought it'd be cool for her to do a Holo novel and to be a reoccurring thing. Thankfully, they did not continue this for very long. In fact, if I think I think it only appears in the finale, Learning Curve, if I remember, and then Persistence of Vision. I think that's it. So just 3 episodes, and that's still too much. I hated this so much. To be fair, though, they said it was based off of Jane Eyre, or however you pronounce that, and it's definitely got that Jane Austen feel to it. I hate those kind of things. I hate that style. When I was visiting my friend in New Zealand, she's like, today's a special day, we're gonna watch this movie and you're gonna watch it with me. I was like, okay, I'll watch it with you. It was Emma, and I was pretending to be interested in it, but I was being nice to her, and I was like, oh yeah, that was interesting, but it was so boring. I really hate Jane Austen. I hate any of these Victoria things. They are so incredibly boring. Sense and Sensibility gagged me with a spoon. I could not give a shit about any of this shit. This is it's worse, because I don't like the slice of life stuff, but this is worse than slice of life. This is a bunch of rich people going around being all posh. Fuck that. I don't give a especially British rich people. It's so boring. But anyway, sorry. I know, they tried to make it a little bit more interesting with the ghost thing, but that was just stupid. That just made it dumb. Anyway, they didn't do the ghost thing in this episode. That will come up in the next episode. So, getting into the whole Chakotay, it's kind of... See, again, as I said, I did not remember this episode at all. When I watched it a couple years later on the tape I had, I was like, I didn't remember the fact that it was Chakotay who was the alien. Because that's just a dumb twist. I'm sorry. And then we get into the whole thing with the, Chakotay and his medicine board, and B'Elanna's operating this medicine board that's, a spiritual token of Chakotay's, and they said, oh, his tribe. And, and I've heard other people talk about how it's kind of disrespectful, the fact that they didn't, name a specific tribe that Chakotay's from. They just said generic tribe and just took all the cliches and stereotypes about Native Americans and said this is what he believes in. And that's kind of disrespectful. That they should have actually, and this is what they do nowadays, stuff like the movie Prey, which was amazing, or the show Echo, is that they actually have a specific tribe consult, and they research that tribe and have them on set. And we'll talk more. I've already talked about how they did have a Native American advisor, but apparently he was a fraud, and he was a known fraud. They just didn't do their fucking research. And so it seemed like they kind of did a half-assed job. It kind of made me think of, if you ever seen BoJack Horseman, which I fucking love that show. There was a part in the season where Diane got hired as a consultant because there's shooting a movie about Sagittarius, and she wrote a book about Sagittarius, so they were consulting her as a historical consultant. But they were just like, oh, we just hired you so we could put your name on the credits to make us seem more legitimate. Just stand in the corner by that cable and make sure nobody walks on it. They didn't give a shit about anything that she had to say. And that made me wonder, how much, reality is there to it? How often does that actually happen in real life? And I do wonder if that was the case with this, Native American consultant that is oh, just stand in the corner over that cable and make sure no one steps on it. But to be fair, if they did listen to him, what he would be saying is a bunch of bullshit, because he wasn't actually Native American. He was a scam artist. But that is, and I feel like there's also more common in the 90s for them to do generic Native American and not name a specific tribe. But yeah, so yeah, whenever I see stuff like the medicine board or whatever, I feel like, it doesn't offend me personally, but I feel like it's probably in bad taste. But anywho, yeah, but the whole thing with Chakotay's spirit, now granted they don't make it mystical. They say, oh, consciousness got turned into energy due to the aliens doing their whatever bullshit that they did, and that's why it happened. In fact, that's what they want to do to the rest of the crew. They want to like rip out their consciousness and consume them or some bullshit like that. So they started doing that with Chakotay, but it was actually Tuvok who was who was being inhabited by an alien. It's funny because that alien had like all the memories of Tuvok and was behaving like Tuvok, And this also seemed like the TNG episode "Lonely Among Us," where there's an alien going around taking over people's bodies and making them do shit. Granted, this episode's nowhere near as bad as that one, because that one is terrible. One of the early season 1 TNG cheese that's just so bad. And the P for Picard is so fucking bad. But yeah, but it reminded me a bit of that in terms of it's just being a cliche. It's the whole alien invasion, alien taking over Starfleet officer's body. It's so cliche, and this is why Voyager is not as good as Deep Space Nine. Because Voyager relies too much on these tropes, where Deep Space Nine tried, for the most part, to avoid the tropes. Now, granted, they invented their own tropes, like the Ferengi episode trope, which is fucking terrible, but still, all the tropes that we've seen in TNG and TOS a billion times already, like, they tried to avoid, whereas Voyager, like, jumped into it. It's all about that, and I mostly blame Brennan Briga and Joe Manowski, because hey, they're the ones that wrote this episode. But yeah, and I think it might have, if they did focus more on the paranoia element like Michael Piller wanted to, probably be a better episode. In fact, that's probably my favorite aspect of the episode. That's the thing I remember most, is the scene with Harry Kim dozing off. Like, Michael Piller is just such a much better writer. I'm sorry. I keep repeating myself, but it's so fucking obvious. To be fair, though, I usually love Jerry Taylor as well, but I do have to remember that she's the one who was totally behind and greenlit Sub Rosa. So she does have some bad tendencies, and I think this holonovel is in line with that. But usually she's good. But, yeah, I mean, other than that, there's really not much to say about it. I mean, as I said, I don't think it totally sucked. It was kind of interesting seeing, kind of suspenseful with Tuvok, and once you realize he's an alien and that he's been... It has that one scene where he, like, phasers everyone at the same time. It was actually a cool effect. We've never really seen anything like that before. But yeah, no, the twist that it was just Chakotay's consciousness going around and going into people, and how like easily it was for them to restore Chakotay. Now, granted, the doctor was like, "Oh, it will take me 3 days to explain. It was very genius and blah blah blah," but it happened off screen, so it was still just easy. It's like, "Oh, let's put him back," and there he is. Like, seemed like it should have been more difficult than that, but Anyway, I would now like to thank all those that support me on Patreon. Very much appreciated. This helped me continue with the channel. I want to give a big special thanks to Brandon Neilhouse, Antarius, and Jordan Johnson. Thank you all so very, very much for your strong support. I would also like to give a shout out to Tyler Cease, Benjamin Mead, Greg Marley, Francisco, Chuck Hooks, Kyrie 091, Anthony D. Benedictus, Ricky, Matty Jester, Joel Valls, Alessandro Michelaccio, Norman Buchwald, Stephen Kennedy, Brenton Berg, and Allison Fordyce. Thank you all so very, very much for your support. Alright, so we have a few Patreon comments on this episode. First comment that we have is from Tyler Cease, who says, psychological tension. The episode does a great job exploring the psychological tension between the crew, particularly with Captain Janeway and Chakotay. The possession element adds a layer of intrigue as you're never sure who can be trusted. Character development. This episode really emphasizes how far the crew has come in terms of working together, but it also hints at the cracks beneath the surface, especially with the interpersonal dynamics of Janeway and Chakotay. It's fascinating to see how their bond gets tested under the circumstances. The mind meld twist. I thought the whole mind meld element was both intriguing and a bit unsettling. It's a cool Star Trek concept, but it also highlights just how vulnerable the crew is when they're so far from home. It's one of those episodes where you can really feel the isolation. Neelix and Tuvok. Neelix and Tuvok's dynamic always stands out, and in Cathexis, their interaction often some lighter moments amidst the tension. Tuvok's calm and logical approach to the situation contrasts nicely with Neelix's more emotional perspective. Alien influence. The alien presence controlling the crew through possession is a unique way to test the loyalty and integrity of the characters. It adds a sci-fi element that's both intriguing and creepy in how it plays with personal autonomy. Pacing and plot. The pacing of the episode might feel a little slow for some, but I think it builds a solid atmosphere of paranoia and mystery. The slow burn works well for the type of psychological thriller that they're going for. Chakotay's role. It's interesting seeing Chakotay being so out of character, especially since his role as first officer is usually very steady. Seeing him under the influence of an alien force really gives us new perspective on the character. Setting the stage. While Cathexis isn't an action-packed episode, it sets up a lot of interesting ideas about the Voyager's crew psyche and tension they'll face as they continue that journey home. So, I mean, the mind meld didn't actually play that big of a part. Like, he didn't actually do a mind meld. That was just evil Tuvok using that as an excuse to take Kes out. And that, again, I feel like that's also something we've seen, where there's a hidden, agent or whatever who's controlled by aliens, and he comes up with a BS excuse to take someone out. Like, we'll see that in DS9's The Adversary pretty soon. Yeah, it's just another. it's just so cliched. This episode, and yeah, not much else there. But anyway, so next comment is from Kerry091, who says, Cathexis, more like, sexless. Because this episode is very unsatisfying, like being sexless. Mark, I don't remember this episode, or if it is unsatisfying. It's your job to tell me if I like it or not. I'm no good at this high-pressure decisions. Do I like this episode? No, you think it sucks. You think that it's sexless. Anyway, next comment is from Ricky, who says, unfortunately, this is one of the stinkers of this great season, which is very, very bad. I mean, come on. Chakotay's consciousness just exit his body and possesses the different main characters to prevent an evil alien consciousness and wants to kill the Voyager crew because he's evil. I'm sorry, but there's nothing else to say about this. So my rating is a 2 out of 10. Alright, so next comment is from Stephen Kennedy, who says, Chakotay finds Shakar's candle and Scottish voice keeps saying this phrase, don't go into that body. I like the mystery of this story until Tuvok is revealed as the alien. Oh wait, there are two aliens in this episode, Casper the friendly ghost and his twin Casper the evil bastard. The first 30 minutes I enjoyed until the bridge scene, which was awful. I will credit Brennan Braga with the part of the story I did like, and then good old Joe Manowski decided to ruin a good episode with a nonsense conclusion. It was like Brennan Braga's mind was taken over by someone else. Don't go into that body. 2 days later, Brennan Braga has recovered, but unfortunately the script was finished by Joe I don't care about canon Manowski. So my rating is 7. Durst, we hardly knew you. Why did you get plastic surgery on your face and die on the operating table? Out of 10. Oh, yes, I love that nickname. That's what I was going to call him. That was such a perfect nickname. Joe, I don't care about canon Manowski. Yes. That's a quote. If you don't realize, if you don't see my videos before, he actually fucking said that, or essentially said that. It's paraphrasing, but still. It makes him a bad writer. It makes him a bad writer. And I just usually don't like his ideas. Like, he's a little bland. Like, Darmok's overrated. But anyway. Let's see. Durst. I forgot to talk about him because this is another example similar to the Seska thing where they show this character in advance. Granted, they only do it for one episode, but they're like, hey, we're going to have this be a major character in the next episode, so let's introduce him first. And I noticed they kind of go out of their way to say his name. Like, Janeway goes, Durst, and they point to him, and he's like, whispers to Janeway once, like, he's put the ship to warp, Captain, or whatever. But, but yeah, I do like that. I do like this. This is what they don't do in later seasons. But anyway, next comment is from Norman Buckwald, who says, sometimes a certain episode that gets a lot of hate, I say, hey, it's not that bad. Cathexis is one of them, and if the rest of you react with a gasp, wait until we get to Twisted. Yeah, the idea of a floating spirit and with the shyster consultant informing what Chakotay is supposed to be like is a bit off-putting, and it's pretty obvious that it's already that Kess was a Vulcan pinch, so of course, it was Tuvok all along. Okay, it was Chakotay that was keeping Voyager from entering the anomaly of the week, but you know what I mean. But still, we get our first exposure to evil Tuvok, which Tim Russ does well, and it's rather different and a compelling story. Yeah, as I've already mentioned, why of everything we know of Janeway's character up to this point, why she'd want to be Bronte governess, or Henry James, thinking of the turn of the screw, recalling her input to Sub Rosa. I think this is oddball Jerry Taylor thing and seeming to bring more of a feminine voice in the series. Other times she's successful, this time is a bit WTF. And then there's our absent hero, Chakotay, with Robert Beltran earning a paycheck, hardly appearing, and when appearing in bed unconscious. As I mentioned, commenting on Heroes and Demons, this was the first of 2 episodes that features characters who were not there, which, considering what the showrunners and writers end up doing with these 2 characters, is definitely quite prophetic. Still, I do enjoy this episode, and I think, believe it or not, is one of the better attempts of inserting mysticism to a science fiction show. Granted, still a bit clumsily, I will give it 7 medicine wheels out of 10. Well, you are correct, in which I disagree with. I don't think it does a good job of introducing mysticism at all. I think it just comes off as hokey and dumb. But I will grant you that Tim Russ did a decent job as evil Tuvok. He did sell it well, because he still behaved like Tuvok. But it makes me wonder, like, what's the nature of this alien that is able to take over his body, yet knows how to act like them and knows everything that Tuvok knows? Like, they've done this a couple times before with alien invasion things, and I don't know, it just seems too convenient to me. And the whole, and also it's like Chakotay's putting his consciousness into bodies, but at the same time the alien's taking over Tuvok's body, so you have 2 like totally different, unrelated mind bodies taking over invasion things going at the same time. I don't know. That just seems a bit no. But anyway, next comment is from Benjamin Mead, who says, I think this is the first episode of Voyager I saw. UPN, the network Voyager aired on, was not carried in my area. My cousin had a contact who taped and mailed episodes to us. I remember getting the first tapes the summer after it aired. We had a leak in our water lines, so my dad had me out digging up water lines all summer. But I would come in for lunch, have a sandwich, and watch the first season of Voyager on VHS on repeat. But before this, I was visiting a family out of town, and this episode was on TV. So it was my intro to the series. As a kid, I thought this episode was cool, but the premise is pretty silly. It's been a while since I watched the early seasons of Voyager, so I don't have much to say. But I'm trying to finish my TNG rewatch in Season 6 right now, and then on to Voyager, so I hope to catch up soon. Yeah, you should have been watching along with me. Come on. So as I mentioned before, I grew up in the Baltimore, Washington, D.C. area, so I had both network channels from both Washington and Baltimore, and I used to watch UPN on a Washington channel, and they got it right away. So, yeah, I had heard that there were a lot of regions that didn't get UPN, but the one I was in, definitely that. But I can't remember if Baltimore got one or not. I think that maybe Baltimore didn't have an UPN. So for the people who weren't near Washington, D.C., who only got Baltimore channels, they might not have got that, but I could be wrong. Because I used to watch the Washington channel for Star Trek, Channel 20, because it had so much Star Trek, and that was my favorite channel, so I would just watch that. But yeah, I can't remember if Baltimore had one or not. Next comment is from Brandon Neal Howes, who says, you realize it's a bad sign when you don't even know the meaning of the word. That is the title of the episode. Then there's 9 minutes of Janeway on the holodeck playing Jane Error. Why does the crew keep stopping to investigate obviously dangerous anomalies instead of concentrating on finding a way home? I honestly don't understand the shit sandwich of an episode, so I will only give it 2 appearances of Pete Durst out of 10. Wow, it's another super low rating. Alright, so final comment is from Antarius, who says, again an episode with very split opinions. I like this one. There were some things that bothered me, like Neelix being jealous again and wanting to dissect crew members, and who is the strange guy telling Janeway what's going on. But nevertheless, I enjoyed this one. It's clearly superior to TNG episode 1. Season 1 episode Lonely Among Us, which had the same concept of alien possession, so I will give it a weak 8 out of 10. Whew! 8 out of 10. Yeah, so this is one of the most split that I've seen. Patron supporters, we go from like several, was it 2 or 3? You gave it a 2 out of 10. Stephen Kennedy gives it a 7 out of 10. Let's see, what did Norman give it again? 7, yeah, 7 out of 10, and then Antares gives it an 8, which is really high. See, who gave it a 2? Ricky. Oh yeah, it was just Ricky and Brandon who gave it a 2. But Kyrie091 totally hated the episode. He thought it sucked. Anyway, thank you, patrons, so much for your comments. So, my rating for Cathexis out of 10 will be a 5 average. Aren't I merciful? Aren't I generous? Aren't I trying to be in between everyone? Yeah, like if I'm honest with myself, I don't think this episode totally sucks. I like the paranoia element. I think the problem is that they didn't focus enough on it. And I also like the element of suspense of an alien taking over Tuvok. and you know, everyone not knowing what he's up to. And I think Tim Russ did a really good job playing it, and there is some, you know, does keep you interested enough to keep you invested. But I was wondering if I should give it a 5 or 6. Then I remembered it had that stupid Holonovel. 5. That automatically knocked it down a point, because fuck that Holonovel so hard. But yeah, the rest of the episode, as I said, it's just hokey. It's just too hokey for me. Too cheesy. Chakotay's ghost spirit running around inhabiting people. And as I said, the serendipity of there just so happened to be 2 separate, unrelated entities going around inhabiting people's bodies at the same time was too much. And yeah, it's just too cheesy and cliche, and they always done stuff like these alien invasion things. They do it all the freaking time. And as I said, my main takeaway about this episode is so forgettable. If I were going to choose the most forgettable episode of Voyager, this would be up there. I don't know if it would take the cake. Ironically, I think that might be the episode Unforgettable, which ironically is very forgettable. But yeah, no, it's definitely one of the most. I honestly totally forgot, like literally forgot this episode existed, and I saw the title, like, what the fuck is this? And I watched it, and I barely remembered it. But anyway, so that's my biggest takeaway of Cathexis, other than it has a pretentious title, is that it's very forgettable. So yeah, not the worst thing ever, but not a good episode, so 5 out of 10 for me. So that is it for my review of Cathexis. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to leave a like, subscribe, leave a comment below, let me know what you thought of the episode. And if you really, really want to support the channel, you can do so by supporting me on Patreon. There's a link in the description below. I have different tiers, different rewards, such as you can leave comments for me to read in my videos. I can pre-release some videos, take some video requests, and I have a series of patron-only videos I do exclusively for Patreon supporters, where I will revisit reviews that I've already done. So you can check that out if you so desire. So let's see what's coming up next on the channel. Where are we? So Saturday I'll be doing a Patreon requested video ranking the Q episodes outside of TNG. So the non-TNG Q episodes. Monday, I will be reviewing the Deep Space Nine episode Explorers. And then next Thursday, back here for another Voyager review, the one I've been hinting at, Faces. We'll be reviewing that on Thursday. So that's what's coming up on my channel. Be sure to check it out. As I continue to cover Star Trek Voyager and Star Trek Deep Space Nine and many other videos on Star Trek and other shows as well. So be sure to subscribe so you can keep up with all of that. And thanks a lot for watching.